Exaclty 00:15 a.m., October 8, 2025. The Special Operations Unit Dagger 8, part of Ukraine's Security Service, SBU, received a direct launch order from High Command in Kyiv. The encrypted message reached a concealed field bunker buried beneath the beaches of Zatoka. Immediately, 8 Magura V5 unmanned surface vessels were launched from coastal rail-guided platforms, beginning a silent strike operation, before a single Russian radar had even realized their existence. Skimming just above the waves at a cruising speed of 50 miles per hour, they headed straight for a target over 310 miles away, the Podlet K-1 surveillance radar array and the Nebo-M system overseeing the eastern sector of the Black Sea. At that very moment, a PD-2 reconnaissance UAV had been hovering for hours over the Tuzla Bay area. From an altitude of 7,550 feet, its USG-405 sensor suite rendered a 3D map of every Russian long-range radar node in the region. On that digital battlefield, strike coordinates were clearly marked, then uplinked directly to the 8 daggers surging in from the west via Starlink satellites orbiting at 12,400 miles above Earth. At 2:55 a.m., roughly 186 miles from the target zone, the 8 Magura V5s surfaced one by one, slicing through the night. Each vessel measured 19 feet in length, coated in radar-absorbing composite paint, and designed with ultra-flat hulls to minimize radar cross-section, RCS. They accelerated to 53 miles per hour, fast enough to stay on schedule, slow enough to blend into sea clutter. This wasn't a suicide mission. It was a precision operation scripted by SBU weeks in advance. 3 main phases: depart launch site, close on target, destroy. But before the explosions, every phase demanded absolute precision. A master plan and dozens of backup contingencies had been programmed into the strike package, steering all 8 USVs straight toward the radar cluster Russia had once deemed untouchable. At a coastal outpost in Crimea, the 91 N6E Big Bird radar, part of the S-400 air defense system, continued its 12-second sweep cycle. The control station showed nothing unusual. The sea appeared empty. But what they didn't know, the Magura V5s were wave-hugging at just 1.5 feet above sea level, with a radar signature smaller than 0.05 square meters. The cold sea surface scrambled the long-range radar beams, and the USVS's return signals dissolved into background clutter. The 8 Magura V5s quietly fanned into an arched formation, spaced precisely 2,460 feet apart, temporarily slipping through the edge of the S-400's coverage bubble. No radio emissions, no comms, no GPS. The 4-cylinder Rotax 914 engines ran just above idle, not silent, but nearly indistinguishable from wave noise. The vessels relied entirely on inertial navigation systems, INS, drifting ghosts across the dark water. At 5:33 a.m., at a distance of 43 miles from the target, a Buk-M2 radar cluster began sweeping. Nested along the shoreline of Russia's Taman Peninsula, the 9S-36 fire control radar of the Buk-M2 entered its 4th scan cycle. The operator's screen showed a 6-second delay, but no anomalies. Clear skies, quiet sea. Or so the exhausted Russian crew believed. The Buk unit remained at alert level 2, not yet in combat mode. The 8 Magura units had been configured for a special role, to bait and disrupt the Buk network. They simultaneously decelerated to just 6.2 miles per hour. Deck hatches opened, mechanical launchers rose, and paired decoy UAVs were deployed. These were lightweight 5-inch frame drones with dummy warheads and electronic spoofers. They were programmed to fly just 13 feet above water, shift transmission frequencies every 6 seconds, cut all signals immediately once radar lock was detected. At 5:39 a.m., 20 decoy UAVs launched in unison, forming smaller swarms, darting in multiple directions and veering toward the Buk cluster. On the 9S-36 radar screen, 20 targets appeared suddenly, all moving at an average speed of 47 miles per hour, heading from open water straight into level 1 threat range. The abrupt appearance of dozens of contacts overwhelmed the radar interface, triggering nonstop alerts in the command cabin. The Magura-M2 battery automatically escalated to Alert Level 1. 8-9 M317ME interceptors were instantly armed. The system switched to semi-active homing mode, guided by the 9S-36 fire control radar. In less than a second, 8 missiles erupted from their launch tubes, streaking into the foggy night sky, leaving bright white contrails. The decoys were struck at approximately 6.8 miles, exploding with minimal force, just as designed. The remaining drones cut their signals the moment lock-on was detected. The missiles lost track, spiraled aimlessly, and self-destructed in the upper flight layer. Inside the control cabin, the 9S-36 radar began flickering. It attempted to reacquire target trajectories but failed to distinguish between real and false echoes. For the next 22 seconds, no valid targets were updated. Exploiting that brief moment of confusion, 3 Magura units maintained parallel vectors, skimming past the left flank of the radar site, threading through a corridor where the book's sensors had been dazzled, and the S-400's low-altitude vision was already blind. No RF signals, no UAV control links. The 3 USVs glided silently over the sea, leaving no visible wake, no light reflections, and no distinguishable mechanical footprint. At 5:45 a.m., the Buk system was still struggling to reacquire valid targets, but the processor continued tracking over 20 phantom echoes. No one noticed that 3 real objects were skimming just above the waves from the southeast. The 3 Magura craft had cleared the Buk's engagement zone. Each cylinder of their engines roared at full throttle, accelerating them back to formation speed less than 10 miles from Tuzla Island. The result, a storm of interceptor missiles detonated in vain. Every nearby air defense unit's attention was diverted. The entire mid-range defense layer had been fooled, misfired, and dropped into a temporary observation state. The radar duty log from the Russian operators later read, "System engaged. No real intrusion detected." But 3 Black Phantoms of modern warfare were already crawling toward the defensive heart of Tuzla Island, and waiting for them was the Pantsir. At 5:51 a.m., at 7.7 miles from Tuzla, a mild electromagnetic pulse rippled across the composite hulls of the Magura V5s. The GNSS navigation feed flickered out. Data channels glitched. All communication with the onboard drones was severed for exactly 2 seconds. The strike group had entered the active jamming zone, a 9.3 miles radius controlled by Russian electronic warfare units. Hidden in a forest north of Tuzla, an R330ZH Zatoka jammer blasted interference across UHF/VHF and GNSS bands, blocking all GPS and GLONASS signals from NATO constellations. Less than 6.2 miles away, a Krasuka 4 complex ran in bloom jamming mode, blanketing the Crimean coastline in thick electronic fog. As soon as the electromagnetic sensors detected waveform distortion beyond threshold, the central INSEK nav chip aboard all 3 USVs automatically switched to dead reckoning mode, navigating purely by inertial guidance without any satellite or RF input. Unit number 5, equipped with magnetic field mapping and terrain referencing modules, assumed the role of passive leader. It synchronized its heading using wave pattern drift and gyroscopic bias, then relayed short-range ultrasonic pulses under 1.2 miles to the other 2 craft. No voice, no radio. They moved through a blinding electromagnetic haze. 3 blind hunters, but pre-trained for this exact moment. Surface radars still saw nothing. The 3 Maguras ran barely 1.4 feet above water, composite-skinned, heat-silent, radio-silent. Gradually, they slipped out of the EW core. Systems slowly woke up, inertial data aligned. Magnetic orientation error under 4 degrees. Ultrasonic link stable, no drift. At the launch waypoint, the true weapons were revealed. The FPV drones on deck received final configuration commands. The Maguras had breached the jamming ring. No suppression, no counterfire, no missiles required. With stored interference maps and static vector control, They drifted undetected straight into the heart of Russia's exclusion zone. 3 gray hulls cut the water, each carried 4 hidden blades beneath its deck, locked into launch bays. Constant speed, constant bearing, no evasive action. They weren't coming to survive, they were coming to end survival for others. The trio of Magura V5s reached their preset coordinates, less than 5.9 miles from Tuzla. The sea stayed calm, no transmissions, no course corrections. Each USV carried 4 kamikaze FPV drones locked under its deck. Their configuration: heavy-frame 9-inch FPV drones, reinforced steel chassis derived from racing prototypes. Each quadrotor ran a 4-prop motor array powered by LiPo 6S 8,000 mAh batteries. Every unit was strapped with a TM62M anti-tank mine, modified by Kyiv engineers. Armor shell removed, casing lightened, retaining only 14 pounds of TNT for optimal balance and payload efficiency. Once inertial sensors confirmed launch coordinates, the deck release mechanism engaged. In under 10 seconds, all 12 drones launched simultaneously, racing just above the sea in dispersed formation. No control signals, no radio. Each had been pre-programmed. All they needed was to fly straight. However, just as the USVs completed their launch cycle, now dangerously close to occupied coastline, the fire control radar of a Pantsir S-1 system on Tuzla suddenly picked up reflections from 3 ultra-low objects over the water. The system switched to emergency engagement mode. Within seconds, 3 missiles were fired, followed by a torrent of 30mm autocannon bursts crossing each other's trajectories. The lead Magura took the first hit, a direct explosion that shattered it across the surface. The second was ripped apart by cannon shells, flipping and disintegrating upon impact with the waves. The last pushed forward for a few hundred more meters, engulfed in flames, before sinking beneath the surf. All of it happened in under 6 seconds. 3 USVs destroyed, no signal returned. But above them, the blades had already been thrown. Russian command issued a terminate all targets order, unaware they had just destroyed the sheaths, while the swords were already free. 12 kamikaze FPV drones had escaped Pantsir's engagement cone, flying low and fast toward their targets. The carriers were gone, but their deadliest offspring, airborne charges of TNT, pressed onward. No retreat, no warning, no time to react. 12 suicide drones raced toward Tuzla Island at altitudes under 23 feet. No armor, no evasion, no return path, each with a single order: reach target, destroy target. As they entered attack range, electronic interference thickened. GNSS vanished entirely. UHF waves tangled into a gray blur, but their inertial guidance and optical sensors held steady. None of the drones slowed down. On the ground, Russian EW posts continued broadcasting along the coast, but no alerts reached the main radar compound. Reload procedures for the Pantsir S-1 missiles had just begun. The guns had gone silent, the launch tubes were lowering, and technicians were rearming. The entire system would remain unable to react for at least 40 seconds. Within just a few kilometers, the interference wall was pierced. The drones switched to thermal imaging and preset inertial routes. No more adjustments. Each had chosen its target long before leaving the mothership. The 2 lead drones locked onto the Nebo-M radar complex, the largest structure in the air defense grid. 6 others broke off to strike 2 Podlet K1 stations, 3 per site, aiming for both directional antennas and control cabins. The remaining 4 climbed slightly, looping around to exploit any blind spots if the first wave failed. No sirens, no alarms. No one on the Russian side realized that their entire primary radar network had already fallen within the kill zone. The 4 lead drones advanced in a wedge formation, hugging the waterline before simultaneously climbing at 1.5 miles from the target. No evasion, no spread, each locked onto a different segment of the Nebo-M radar complex. The target structure was large, easy to track, and uncamouflaged. The main rotating antenna was mid-sweep, still elevated. Below it, the control cabin and power container sat side by side in a fixed layout, unchanged from reconnaissance imagery captured the night before. The first UAV struck the antenna base directly. It pierced the steel braces below and detonated on impact. One leg of the mast buckled, tilting the rotation array by nearly 10 degrees before sparks flared and the mechanism shut down. The second UAV hit the roof of the control cabin. Its HEI warhead punched through the composite shell and exploded within the internal systems. The blast exit blew open the rear signal panel. The remaining two drones veered 15 degrees and hit the power unit and cooling systems. A secondary explosion followed the impact, sending up a narrow but thick black plume of smoke. Within 7 seconds, the Nebo-M system was completely neutralized. No technician response, no signal reroute. No one on the Russian side realized their primary eye had just been blinded. 2 seconds after the Nebo-M strike, the remaining 8 drones dove in, skimming past concrete revetments toward the 2 Podlet K1 radar stations. Each group split into 2 pairs. One pair targeted the main rotating antenna, the other slammed into the control cabin. No delays, no interference from command and control. At the northern Podlet K1 unit, the first 2 UAVs slammed into the rectangular antenna, tilted at a 35-degree angle. The direct hit snapped the rotation axle, triggering an immediate explosion. The shattered antenna broke in half, falling directly onto the cabin below. The second pair of UAVs struck the left side of the control cabin, the area housing the signal processing suite. The steel housing shuddered as if hammered. The cabin's roof blew off, flames erupted briefly, and then choked out in thick black smoke. At the second Podlet unit, the outcome was identical. The UAV pair attacking the antenna struck the elevation arm, collapsing the entire rotating array. Debris flew over 65 feet. The control cabin was hit on its exposed right flank. No barriers protected it. A section of the shell was torn open. The backup solar array caught fire, igniting the electronics inside. 2 small explosions followed, not enough to collapse the structure, but more than enough to destroy every circuit board. Less than 12 seconds after the first drones were launched, all 3 radar stations, the Nebo-M and both Podlet K1s, were eliminated from the regional air defense network. No antennas remained functional, no cabins emitted signals. Tuzla Island's long-range surveillance capability had gone completely dark. Just 16 seconds after the final explosion, the command post on the Crimean coast detected a total loss of communication with the Tuzla radar cluster. A status check was dispatched through backup channels. No reply. An Orlan 10 reconnaissance drone was scrambled from Jankoy Air Base following an emergency flight path. At the same time, a Raptor-class patrol boat left port from Kerch, heading toward the island. The internal emergency beacon at Tuzla was activated, not to signal combat readiness, but to request rescue, but it was already too late. Russian technical teams on the island managed to drag only 1 radar operator from a burning cabin. The other 6 had vanished. The Pantsir S-1 missile platforms remained half-loaded. The retaliation order was frozen. Every defense contingency had assumed the radar would still be intact. On the other side, the Ukrainian strike team sent no victory signal. No comms were reactivated. The entire sequence, from the USV departure to UAV launches to the final strike, had occurred under complete radio silence. A blind corridor opened on Ukraine's battlefield map, stretching over 28 miles from Zatoka's coast to the waters near Kerch. No radar waves, no alert systems, no early warning. The entire troop and logistics transit line across the Crimean Bridge now lay exposed to the next wave of attacks. Electronic warfare, air defenses, radar infrastructure, all neutralized in under 1 minute. No cruise missiles, no fighter jets. Just 1 team of USVs, a swarm of kamikaze drones, and a strategy calibrated to the last kilometer. Mission completed.